Welcome, dear listener. I'm Toro, and tonight I invite you to rest, to breathe slowly, and to travel with me back 100 years, to the world of 1925. As you close your eyes, imagine the delicate glow of gaslight lamps against the evening mist, the shuffle of newspapers on wooden stands, and the faint strains of a gramophone playing from an open window. The world is both familiar and distant, recognizable in its hopes and daily joys, yet softened by time's distance. This year unfolds like a quiet in-between moment. The First World War has already faded into memory, yet the darker storms of the future have not yet gathered. It is a year of invention, of curiosity, of books being written, jazz being played, and children running through the streets with marbles in their pockets. It is a time when radios flickered to life in living rooms, when headlines told stories of daring flights and sporting triumphs, and when families gathered each evening around their tables, sharing both bread and laughter. So let us drift together into 1925, allowing the steady rhythm of history to guide us into calm reflection and perhaps into gentle dreams. World events. In 1925, the world turned slowly, quietly, weaving stories that would echo across decades. Let us walk softly through a few of them. In Europe, one of the most hopeful events unfolded in the autumn. Leaders gathered in the Swiss town of Locarno to sign agreements known as the Locarno Treaties. These pacts promised peace between old rivals, Germany, France and Belgium, with Britain and Italy as guarantors. For many, it was a sign of calm, that perhaps after years of war, nations could sit together at one table and speak of friendship instead of weapons. Newspapers described the treaties in gentle tones, as if the world itself was exhaling a cautious sigh of relief. Meanwhile, across the Atlantic, the United States experienced a very different kind of momentum. The roaring Twenties were in full swing, with cities buzzing under electric lights, jazz clubs alive with rhythm, and stock markets steadily climbing. President Calvin Coolidge presided over what many called an age of prosperity, though the countryside still whispered with quieter lives of farming and tradition. In Britain, a shift occurred in political life. Stanley Baldwin continued his steady role as Prime Minister, but debates about labour rights, housing and welfare shaped public conversation. The coal industry, in particular, stood at the centre of many discussions, foreshadowing challenges yet to come. Farther east in the Soviet Union, Joseph Stalin was slowly, quietly consolidating power after Lenin's death in 1924. For most ordinary people, life was lived not in politics but in the steady rhythm of work, markets and family gatherings. Yet history was turning, even if few could see its direction clearly. In Asia, Japan was growing more industrial, its cities humming with factories and new ideas. Meanwhile, China was in the midst of political struggles as competing movements sought to shape the future of a vast and restless country. And in quieter corners of the world, life carried on with small triumphs. In Norway, explorer Roald Amundsen continued his polar journeys, chasing the mysteries of the North. In Canada, towns expanded as immigrants built new homes and neighbourhoods. In Australia and New Zealand, radio began connecting distant farms to voices from cities, shrinking the feeling of isolation across wide landscapes. Thus, the world in 1925 moved gently between past and future, balancing hope with uncertainty, but always carried forward by ordinary people who lived, dreamed, and worked in the quiet hours of each day. Daily life around the world. To step into daily life in 1925 is to notice both the small and the familiar. Imagine a morning in Paris. Bakeries open their shutters, filling the streets with the warm scent of bread. Men in flat caps and women in cloche hats walk briskly along the boulevards. A few motor cars honk gently, while bicycles and horse-drawn carts share the cobblestones. Cafes fill with the murmur of voices, the clinking of porcelain cups, and the rustle of newspapers with black and white headlines. In an American household, the radio has become a treasured centerpiece. Families gather around as a glowing dial pulls in music and news from afar. Children sit cross-legged, listening to jazz rhythms or baseball scores, their imaginations stretching across the airwaves. The cost of a loaf of bread is just a few cents, and a gallon of milk only about 40. For many families, Sunday remains a day of rest, with picnics in the park or church bells ringing softly across small towns. Fashion, too, carries the mark of the times. Women's dresses are loose, flowing, often with dropped waists and decorative beads for evening wear. Men favor suits, hats, and polished shoes, even for ordinary days. In rural areas, clothes remain more practical, sewn at home or bought from catalogues like Sears. Children, in 1925, find joy in games that require little more than imagination. Marbles, skipping ropes, wooden toys, and paper kites fill their afternoons. In city streets, boys may play stickball with makeshift bats, while in villages, girls braid hair beneath shady trees. Meals differ from place to place, but staples are simple. Stews simmering on stovetops, bread baked fresh, butter churned, jams made from summer fruits. In Britain, tea remains a daily ritual, while in Italy, pasta and wine bring families together at long tables. Across Asia, rice remains the heart of meals, shared in bowls with vegetables and spices. Travel. In 1925 is shifting. Motor cars are more common in cities, though trains still carry the majority of long-distance passengers. Steamships cross oceans carrying emigrants, tourists, and letters. Air travel exists, but it is still daring, with small planes making short, adventurous hops. Magazines and catalogues bring the wider world into living rooms. Families page through advertisements for radios, phonographs, and new fashions, dreaming of purchases that may one day brighten their homes. And in many places, electricity is reaching new neighborhoods, replacing candlelight with soft bulbs that flicker on at dusk. Daily life is not free of hardship. There is poverty, there are illnesses. But within the gentle fabric of ordinary days, people laugh, dream, and carry forward the small routines that stitch a year into memory. Science, inventions, and technology. 1925 was also a year of invention and wonder. Imagine the excitement of hearing a voice from across a continent carried through invisible waves of radio. Broadcasting expanded rapidly this year, bringing concerts, speeches, and even bedtime stories to millions. In medicine, discoveries about vitamins and nutrition were spreading, slowly transforming diets and health. Insulin, discovered just a few years earlier, was already saving lives of people with diabetes, offering new hope. Automobiles were no longer rare luxuries. By 1925, companies like Ford produced cars at prices many families could afford. The famous Model T, nicknamed the Tin Lizzie, rolled across dusty roads connecting towns and changing the pace of life. Petrol stations appeared along highways and motoring holidays became possible. In aviation, daring pilots captured imaginations. Though Charles Lindbergh's transatlantic flight was still 2 years away, aviators were already breaking records and pushing boundaries. Airships, those great floating giants, also fascinated the public, sailing gracefully across skies. In laboratories, physicists like Werner Heisenberg explored the strange new world of quantum mechanics, ideas that seemed as dreamlike as they were scientific. Everywhere, curiosity was alive. In classrooms, children learned from maps and globes, imagining lands beyond their reach. In homes, gadgets like electric toasters or vacuum cleaners quietly began to ease daily chores, symbols of a modern age slowly unfolding. Culture and the arts. The cultural life of 1925 glowed with creativity. In music, jazz was the heartbeat of the decade. In smoky clubs of Harlem, musicians like Duke Ellington and Louis Armstrong played melodies that made feet tap and spirits rise. Records carried these sounds far beyond the cities, bringing syncopated rhythms to small towns. Literature blossomed with voices that still echo today. F. Scott Fitzgerald published The Great Gatsby in 1925, a novel shimmering with images of parties, longing, and the fragility of dreams. In Paris, Ernest Hemingway released In Our Time, his spare style marking a new path in writing. Across the ocean, Virginia Woolf gave readers Mrs. Dalloway, a novel weaving the details of one day into deep reflections of life. In art, surrealism spread its imaginative wings. Painters experimented with dreamlike shapes, bending the familiar into the fantastic. In theaters, silent films flickered across screens. Stars like Charlie Chaplin and Greta Garbo became beloved, their faces expressive without words. Sports, too, stirred gentle excitement. Baseball thrived in America, with Babe Ruth's powerful swings drawing crowds. In Europe, football filled muddy fields with cheers from local fans. Culture, in 1925, was not only entertainment, it was a source of hope, beauty, and escape, offering both laughter and wonder to those who sought it. Media and headlines. News in 1925 traveled by newspaper, radio, and word of mouth. Imagine walking to a corner stand, the ink still damp, the headlines bold across the page. One headline might announce, "Treaties signed at Locarno promise peace in Europe." Another, new novel The Great Gatsby captures spirit of the age. Local papers told smaller stories, fairs opening, school plays, train timetables. Advertisements promised hair tonics, radios, and new fashions. Prices were modest, a loaf of bread just a few cents, a new dress a few dollars. Softly read, these headlines paint a picture not of crisis, but of daily rhythms, of lives unfolding gently in a world carried forward by both tradition and change. People born and people passed this year. In 1925, the world welcomed many who would later leave their mark. Among them was Malcolm X, born in Nebraska, who would grow to become a voice for justice and equality. In Britain, a baby named Margaret Thatcher entered the world, destined to one day serve as Prime Minister. In music, Bill Haley, who would help spark rock and roll, was born. This year also said farewell to lives already full of stories. The great inventor William Friese Greene, one of the pioneers of motion pictures, passed away in London. The French writer Anatole France, Nobel laureate, also left the stage. Each birth and passing was part of the quiet rhythm of time, new voices entering, old voices fading, the world continuing its gentle turning. As 1925 drew to a close, the world seemed suspended in a soft, quiet pause. Nations hoped for peace even as shadows stirred in politics. Families, however, lived their lives in the details, meals shared, children tucked into bed, radios humming in the background. It was a year of contrasts, ancient traditions still strong, yet modernity arriving in radios, cars, and books. It was a year when writers gave the world timeless novels, when music carried joy, when inventions hinted at futures not yet imagined. The closing days of December brought festive lights to shop windows, carols to churches, and laughter to winter streets. Snow fell across Europe and North America, muffling the sound of horses' hooves and automobile horns alike. In warmer climates, families gathered on verandas, fanning themselves in the evening heat. Everywhere, people welcomed the new year with small rituals of hope, raising glasses, lighting candles, writing resolutions on scraps of paper. No one knew what 1926 would bring, but in that moment hearts beat softly with both gratitude and expectation. And so the curtain falls gently on 1925, leaving behind memories of jazz, novels, treaties, and ordinary days. Like a lullaby, it carries us forward into dreams, reminding us that history, too, can be a place of calm reflection. Thank you, dear listener, for journeying with me through the world of 1925. I hope this gentle walk through time has brought you peace, calm, and perhaps a little wonder. If you've enjoyed drifting back with me, I invite you to softly like this video, subscribe for future journeys, and share it with anyone who might need a quiet companion to rest. For now, may your night be deep with rest, your dreams gentle and kind, and your heart light. Until we meet again in the next chapter of history's lullabies, sleep well.